because I have 10 minutes to run through this information. So I'm planning to give a brief snapshot of one of the project activities that occurred as part of our project, Building Excellence in Global Citizenship Education. And in 2013, all the Trobe University courses were required to identify one subject that in some way related to global citizenship. Our project set out to better understand what was an unclear idea put forward at that time. An idea that had been harnessed in strategic planning documents and mandated as an area of learning in the university. We call them the learning essentials, and global citizenship at a Trobe is a learning essentials, an essential area of learning. So a number of us were around in 2013 when these essentials were brought in, and this unclear idea is kind of a bit of the background for our project. I think, Lynette, you've talked about, you've been in this space for 20 years. Global citizenship means all sorts of things to all sorts of people. It's in the media. It's, it's bandied around quite a bit. Overpopularised, over-theorised or under-theorised, but confusingly so anyway. This is just one that I came across, a bit of marketing for a very big festival happened in New York a week or two ago. And you can't quite read well, I can't read from here, but it's about ending extreme poverty. So I imagine some of the funds for this concert must have gone towards that. So, you've got a very kind of social justice kind of framing going on there. I had another slide photo on here which I decided in the interests of possible litigation that I should take away. It was the Global Citizen magazine that many of you may know about. I got upgraded once in my life to on Emirates, and up there in my pocket was this magazine, Global Citizen. And I thought, great, some reading. I can't remember who was on the cover, but the likes of Mark Zuckerberg are the type of people that go on the cover of that. People, and there's a wonderful story in there about philanthropy or whatever. But then when you kind of get into it a bit further, what's in there is lots of articles and advertisements and signals of which countries you could go to buy cheap land and to invest. So it's the global citizen entrepreneur, probably not in the way that we're potentially thinking about it. But, representations everywhere in the media. We wanted to know what our colleagues at La Trobe University thought about this idea. So that's our question. How do La Trobe educators understand and enact the idea of global citizenship in the curriculum? So what we did in order to find out the answers to this question, we did interviews, a focus group, and across 3 lunchtime seminars, we spoke to people about the idea and what they were thinking about it. The detail might be a bit blurry here, but our participants came from both colleges of our university. We have 2 colleges, Arts, Sciences and Social Sciences and Commerce, and Science, Health and Engineering, and that the columns give you a bit of an idea of the schools that are in those colleges and the disciplines. We had equal participation across our 2 colleges, but as you can see, predominantly it was folk from humanities and social sciences and allied health that really kind of got behind or put their hand up to be interviewed to talk to us. So in terms of the idea of global citizenship, participants from our arts, social sciences and commerce college had the most critical things to say about the idea that global citizenship as an idea was problematic, misleading, wildly utopian, middle class, privileged, contested, aspirational, there's no such thing, it's too narrowly focused on ethnic diversity, leads to global conformity. I'm giving you a particular snapshot. There's a whole lot more information, and I guess there's certain things that I've been drawn to present to you. In terms of what global citizenship should be working toward, well, what participants told us what global citizenship should be working towards, skills in intercultural communication were highlighted across both colleges, marginally more so from science, health and engineering. We're teaching them about how to communicate with people from different cultural backgrounds. The whole thing is about understanding that there's tremendous diversity within all cultural groups and you can't make generalisations. Participants talked about global citizenship in different ways, both descriptively and normatively. So in one kind of 5-minute conversation, there would be people's personal ideas and descriptions of what this thing meant to them, how it upset them, or they were on board with it. But then there was also a statement about key ideas that I guess are maybe universally held about some of the maybe utopian aspects of global citizenship. So this quote, "I don't like the term global citizenship. It tends to be associated with nationalism. But yes, universities have a big responsibility to get students thinking about their moral and ethical responsibilities as people." Here, global citizenship is talked about a bit more in a normative sense. There's some big words here that we kind of recognise to be associated with global citizenship. But when I read this again, I thought, this sounds like a global superhuman being if they've got all these things going for them. It's the ability to be comfortable engaging with diversity and not be freaked out by that. Learning to be a bit more cosmopolitan, seeing yourself as part of the broader human family and being able to work above the differences that exist between people and cultures. With a full recognition of what those differences are and building the kind of interpersonal skills that allow you to transcend those differences. There's lots of be's and not to be's. It's very kind of ontological and a bit transcendental, I suppose, if we're talking about transcending differences. Global citizenship was also put forward as an idea that can be put to work for other learning purposes. So there's learning to be a global citizen, but just talking about what that is, maybe there's other purposes. One person said, pedagogically, for me, the most meaningful sorts of interactions with students have been disruptive, and that person's particular subject matter and what she brings to it is really about messing with people's how they see the world and their place in it. The most participants talked about the practical or employability aspects of what global citizenship education was important for. A smaller number of participants talked about their teaching practice in ways that emphasised the bringing together of critical and transformative agendas into their teaching. And I'll read this one out. I was encouraging, so this is an educator who teaches international students who are coming from their country to learn about wonderful Western ideas to take back to their own country. I was encouraging them to think about where this idea of third world and first world comes from and all of the violence and baggage associated with that idea and with globalisation and global norms like human rights. It kind of leads to a bit of an existential crisis for a lot of them. So that educator had it as their mandate to really try and disrupt. We also asked questions of our participants about the process of the essentials and in particular getting their subject recognised or badged as an essentials subject, what that was like, and just a couple of quotes. And I've chosen quotes that are a little bit more critical of that process. This first one the managerial top-down process has been disempowering. The university's big challenge is to how to remove levels of gatekeeping and simplify processes to allow subject coordinators to be creative in how they firstly think about global citizenship and then how they put it to practice in their subjects. There was certainly a sense from some that their claim and statement that their subject related to global citizenship was not actually recognised. And that was interesting to listen to people talk through that. This thing is so contested, how can anyone mandate exactly what it's going to be in the curriculum? I really love this quote. I'm not interested in teaching my students to be agile players in the global market. And I guess in that is the sense that was what the university perhaps wanted. So people were really wonderfully open with some of those tensions. Other concerns, kind of less visceral, I suppose, were related just to a lack of clarity about what the thing meant. This idea of global citizenship, what counted as global citizenship relevant. So, just as a summarising slide, I'm bringing no real analytic sensibility to this at all. I'm really just kind of giving you things that we've found. This work's ongoing, but just to summarise some ideas from across the interviews, the focus groups, and that came up in our seminars. Global citizenship education was talked about as being more than international student mobility. It being about what happens on campus, in class and beyond, not overseas necessarily, to enable reflection on self and other. It's about understanding, respecting and embracing diversity, understanding injustice and rights, and for some, the global citizenship education offers a possibility of a real kind of action agenda. Not a lot of that in the interviews, but certainly it was there. And this was not a common thing that was talked about, but that global citizenship education can also be about thinking about how we prepare graduates for their discipline in the globe, internationally is probably more accurate. So knowing that your discipline has a place beyond your own country and your own state, and what are the conventions of that discipline across the globe. The idea and the question, which Valerie Clifford brought to one of our seminars, was really about thinking whether there can be any global citizenship education without transformation, and the idea that there needs to be some sort of out of comfort zone learning, idea that Kathleen Lilly's talked about a lot, and that there must be some sort of disorienting dilemma in the curriculum or in the learning activities, was one that was echoed by various participants. And also at one of our seminars, we really honed in on what it was as educators that we might need to do to be comfortable to bring up ideas that make our students uncomfortable. And is it about worrying about them being uncomfortable, or is it about us worrying about being uncomfortable? So, there's some work that needs to be done around discomfort. And I think the whole kind of threshold concepts idea of, really troubling people and troubling ideas is really important here. And there was also conversation, particularly in our focus group, about whether we needed to rethink this idea of learning essentials being tied to one subject. Is that a bit limiting? Should we be thinking about this as a whole of course thing? And that should courses perhaps in the Mark II version of the essentials be required to have a course intended learning outcome that says something related to this idea, so that there's a more meaningful follow through the entire curriculum rather than, I've got one subject, we can tick the box. We've been branded as having a global citizenship subject. Just want to finish on this one slide, and I use this one just about in every presentation. The educational philosopher Gert Biester, who's at Brunel College, I think he has a book or an article, What Should Really Matter in Education. But I took this off a slide share that I found looking up some other work of his. He has a wonderful book called The Beautiful Risk of Education, if anybody wants to go and read some Biester work. But what should really matter, according to him, is formation towards a grown-up way of being in the world, in which we acknowledge and care for what and who is other. And thank you to Tula for this last quote that we think is really important, in that sense of there must be criticality alongside transformation, and that thinking critically is the heart of anybody transforming their life. And that's it from me. Thank you.